Now it's time to move on to the lowercase alphabet. So this is really where the fun starts. I want to note first that the lowercase alphabet is not something that I teach in alphabetical order. In my years of teaching, I have really found that teaching letters based on the repeated shapes that they contain is a lot more effective than teaching letters based on how they rank in the alphabet. Once you understand how many shapes repeat throughout the alphabet and how practicing those individual shapes will help you learn letters faster, I think you're going to understand why I go in the order that I do. That said, we will be starting with the letter A. I have set up here the exact same grid that I was using before, and I'm using the same felt tip brush pen. So our small lowercase letters that are referred to as spanning an X height will span this distance in our grid. So from the baseline to what's called either the X height line or the waist line. And I'll teach you the letters in a second, but I just first want to explain something about how they're going to fit in the grid. That means that an A is going to fit in this space. A D will extend one block higher, and a G, for example, would extend one block lower. So that's because the A is a letter like M, N, O, X that fits from only the baseline up to the waistline. Letters like D, K, B, H, those will extend above the waist height line all the way up to the ascender line because this distance is called the ascender. And letters like G, Y, cursive Z have descenders, and those are going to extend below the baseline down to the descender height. So the first shape that we're going to do is the basis of the letter A. It's this shape. We're starting right here, not at the top. We're starting right here about a third of the way down and moving in an upstroke. So again, no pressure. We curve into a nice thick downstroke and then again reverse our pressure here. If this looks familiar, you'll notice that this is basically an underturn that we already practiced in our stroke drills. So you have a little bit of an overturn combined with an underturn, and then you meet up together right here. So let's draw that one more time. This is an essential bowl shape that's going to be repeated in multiple letters. I want you also to notate that this is not actually a perfect ellipse. It's not perfectly round. This side is nice and round, but this side feels a little bit more straight. So let's do it one more time. I've curved right here, but now I'm going to make a straight line to connect to my starting point. You'll see why that's kind of crucial for the elegance of the letter in just a moment. So now let's combine it with a simple downstroke leading to underturn. I do not lift my pen here. Let me do it once more, even larger. Now, let me show you that straighter line that we created is what makes this nice little caret of negative space underneath the A. Watch what happens if I make that bowl a lot rounder. That's more like an O or an ellipse. But what happens when I come back up here and make my downstroke? This space is much smaller. The center of gravity of the letter moves from being nice and even in the middle down. It actually looks, if you can see, that letter looks like it's actually kind of sinking into the baseline. It does not look as elegant. It looks a lot clunkier, and the extra rounded shape really gives it a little bit more of an amateur appearance. Now, optionally, you could start slightly higher and still get an elegant letter. But again, I'm still making a straight upstroke there. And all that does is decrease this negative space. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's a matter of stylistic preference. So why don't you go through, practice some bowls, separate out the two elements if you want, bowl, downstroke, and then combine them into a number of A's. There are practice sheets for all of these letters included in the course materials as well. So the next letter we're going to do is D, and you're about to see that D is remarkably similar to A. We start with that exact same bowl, but right here, instead of stopping at the waistline, we'll just keep going and curve down. So we have an overturn, an underturn, another overturn, and another underturn. Bowl, ascender, underturn. Now, here's something crucial. I see this a lot with students. They get here to the bowl, and then they change direction and go up. Well, we don't want that because first of all, it makes the letter too upright. Second of all, it decreases the width of this loop. I like to have a lot of nice negative space in here inside of my loop. It complements the negative space inside the bowl, and it just overall looks a lot more elegant. So what was the mistake made here? The mistake was made that a lot of students feel the need to change direction here. And in a way that comes from our writing of printed D, because we feel like that stem needs to be vertical. It absolutely does not. So when you get here to the bowl, keep going in the exact same direction. You will not change your angle at all. So you come up here to the ascender line, and that's when you turn around. And you'll see that as you play, you can get a lot of variation in the width of the letter without adjusting its height or ratio. So, for example, this one is narrower because I made the bowl narrower, and I made the angle of this a little bit less steep so that when I came around, the loop itself was also a little bit narrower. When you're following the italics, a general rule of thumb is that the downstrokes, the thicker strokes, are what should look visually like they're adhering more to the line. So to start with, that will mean that our bowl, the thickest part of our bowl, is tangential to that italic line, and that our downstroke stem here is parallel as well. Now we're going to do another bowl letter, again using the exact same bowl, but instead of a D, we're going to do the letter G. So here we have our bowl again, and just like A, we're going to change direction at the waistline, but we're going to move down to the descender line and make sort of a counterclockwise underturn and come back up in a very long upstroke. No pressure on this upstroke here. So again, bowl, descender, loop up. Now, you'll notice that in the lowercase letters, I have these exit strokes, or the ending stroke of the letter, and I'm just sort of letting them flow beautifully out of the letter. But of course, as soon as letters start to connect to each other, you're going to notice that the exit strokes are going to have to adjust according to the entry point of the next letter. So an exit stroke plus an entry stroke will become a single connector stroke. But learning the letters like this, one by one in a vacuum, I highly recommend that you make entry strokes, which none of these letters have yet, and exit strokes like these just look beautiful so that the letter alone stands by itself. Now to zoom out a bit, I want to make it clear how repeating these bowls are. The A, the D, the G, that is such a repeating shape so far, and we're about to do one more letter that contains it, that just practicing and drilling that bowl shape over and over is going to get you halfway to 4 different letters. It's a very important repeating shape. That next letter, of course, is Q. So Q and G are, of course, very related because this downward stem of the Q, up to this point, it looks exactly like a G, but right here, we're doing a clockwise underturn instead of a counterclockwise one. So here we go again with our bowl, downstroke, upstroke, and out. This simple alphabet that I'm teaching you intersects here at the baseline. That is a stylistic choice. You're going to see as your practice continues that there are lots of creative ways to do most letters. You can make variations of most, so you can intersect here, you can even intersect past that downstroke, but this course is not exactly about variations. It's about creating a simple alphabet that you can then take one step further into the variation territory if you so choose. Now, if you want to take a moment, pause the video, go over to your practice sheets. I recommend drilling these a little bit if you'd like before moving on to the next set of letters.